everybody that works underneath you is always watching you, right? All right, and it's not one of those things of do what I say, not what I do. With parenting, it's very much so they're going to do what they see you do, right?
Yeah.
So if they're going to see that you're active, with PTA organizations and supporting the community and stuff like that, they see that, And to your point, we were talking about business perks. That's another thing. That's 100% that they see, right? But it's the way we approach those types of things. Those are the examples that have to be set, and I think that's kind of something that we always have to keep in mind. They are always watching.
Welcome to the Business of Parenting podcast. Tune in as we discuss the principles of successful parenting as a business professional. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of BOP, Business of Parenting podcast, where I get to talk about anything and everything I want to talk about when it comes to parenting. Why? Because I'm not an expert, so you can't hold me accountable for anything. No, I'm just kidding. Today, I have an amazing guest with me. I have a good friend with me. I have Squire Pettis with me. Squire, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Man, I am great. Thanks for having me on here. And I will agree to the disclaimer that, I don't know it all. So we're going to just learn this as we go. And we'll probably have a bunch of bad ideas and maybe a few good ones, and we'll make it work.
You know what, though? Don't you think, like, when I think of business of parenting, and a lot of people go like, what do you mean the business of parenting? Like, I understand that I might take a slightly different approach to parenting than maybe the social norm, but for me in my brain, that's just kind of how I had to process. I had to approach parenting as a business so that I could actually understand the amount of time, effort, development, coaching, training, and everything that was required, to develop out these little products I call kids. And now I'm gonna get in trouble for saying that one too. But I only got so many years to develop these products out, and then I got to put them in the market. The market's going to determine if they're a dick or not. So I mean, I have to treat it like a business, and I think there are many others out there that do see this kind of as a business, because just the amount of time and everything gets allocated to it. It really is a business. So, that's why we call it the Business of Parenting podcast. Let's start off our podcast today with a little background story, because I'm always fascinated myself, right? Tell us a little bit about how your family's structured, your kids, and, what you currently do for work.
So, I have 4 children. I guess you can't call them children now. They're all teenagers or up, but, the oldest will be 21 in July. Had one that just turned 19 in May, one that turned 17 in January, and one that will actually be 15 this coming November. She's 14 now. So I have all teenagers and up. Been in the automotive business 12 plus years. So been with them for a good period of time, obviously in the automotive business. But before that, I was just doing odd jobs here and there. I'm currently a after sales market manager for Genesis Motor America. So I work on the OEM side, not on the retailer business side of things, as far as when it comes to the car business. I have worked in dealerships before, but now I'm strictly working from an OEM perspective. Married now, and the most thing that I'm looking to do is, with the younger 2, the 17 to 14-year-old, trying to do my best to mold them to be the best products, as we discussed, that they could be. The older 2 are in college. So, they're, as we call it, living their best life and doing everything that they possibly can do. So that is me.
I think it's cool that you kind of have that, a little bit of that age group, because it's such a significant kind of transition, right? You go from kind of training and developing younger children to then, as they become, young adults and go into the real world, we have to now become a coach, where it's like, I did what I can do as far as training. I showed you, I developed you the best way. Now hopefully I can just kind of coach you through some of these things, but I can't tell you necessarily what to do. Man, I look where you are. I got my 3 right, 11, 8, and 7, and okay. I just look where you are. I know I'm heading that direction, and I'm trying to get as much of that kind of training and development in as I can, because I know there's going to become a day, where it's just that's it. All I can do is just kind of coach from there. So, man, it's cool. Very, very cool. 4 kids. Wow. That's got to be a house full. I thought we were crazy when we had 3. So 4 is absolutely awesome. Let's kick off. We have some topics. We have some cool topics, right? And I love the topics you chose, by the way, Squire. I think there's going to be some seriously fun topics. And I love the fact that you brought up the topic of homework, right? Because, my kids are right at that age where homework's become a bigger thing. Your kids have now gone through that and still are kind of in that stage of, it's like, so the question is, do you do homework with them? And if so, how do you kind of approach that? Everyone's got a different approach, and I'd love to kind of get your thoughts.
So I think, when the children are, full teenagers to the point of, your 14s and up, you don't do homework with them anymore. But at the younger ages, I would say yes. And it would be twofold for me. Thing number one, so that you can, I would say, brush up on some of the skills that you may have forgotten. There are some math topics, or maybe some history topics, or some, government topics that come up in some of the children's schooling that you may like to go back and look at, whether it's American history, or in your case, Canadian history, or, with, my children, African American history, or, heritage history, or whatever it is, just to go back and learn some of those concepts. And, also it shows both the child, and going into what we call the business of parenting, it shows the schools that you're looking to be involved. Now, yes, sometimes it could backfire, because your child could go back to school and say, hey, Dad, help me with homework, and they get all these red marks and you did it wrong. And I've had that happen before. So that means I've got that conversation with the teachers, like, hey, I did it the way I thought we used to do it, and maybe that's not the same way as it is before. And sometimes you do it and it is right, and I have had scenarios where both I did it with the child and it's wrong, and I've had scenarios where I did it with the child and then the child's turned it in. And then I got a conversation from the teacher saying, well, maybe we didn't want you to help them as much. We wanted the child to actually do it on their own, to see what levels of, academic excellence or that academic struggles that they have. Right? So I've had it both ways, right? I did it and it's all been wrong. And I've did it and I've had the teacher say, okay, this is too good. This is too good.
Something doesn't make sense here. Like, something's going on. It doesn't add up. But you know what, though? I love the fact that you kind of bring that up, because I remember when I was going to school, and it's specifically in high school, right? It was so insanely important to get good grades. Like, you had to get good grades to get into a good college or a good university, right? You had to get those good grades. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, there were times that, that I would see parents, practically do a kid's homework for them, right? Just do that. But you know what thing is funny? It's just like, I think I look at kind of this last generation, and kind of when I was growing up, right? There was a lot of fear of letting kids make mistakes on their own, right? Like, it's like there was so much preparation of, like, you had to get into a good school. Getting into a good school meant you're going to get a good job. A good job meant you're going to move out of the house. Like, everything was prereqed on this, and there was so much emphasis on having to do really, really well that I definitely know of many parents out there that jumped in, and tried to help them out. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe there's been a fundamental shift. Maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just in my head. But, I personally would rather help in the sense of making sure that it's completed. But I want my kids to fail. Does that sound bad? I guess it does. No, it doesn't. I'm going to accept it. There we go. I'm going to work this thing out. I want my kids to fail. I want them to fail because I find that they're going to find a faster way on their own to succeed, But do you feel like homework, though, all right, because there's such a big portion of the grade that's given out there based on the homework. Do you feel like homework hinders our ability as parents to let our kids fail?
It's a very interesting question. And I guess there's a difference between the concept of doing the homework for the child,
yes,
and doing the homework with the child.
There we go. I like that.
So a So interesting enough, I've obviously seen your work and seen the people that you talk to. So in the automotive business, we have these conversations with, sales managers and service managers and sales consultants and sales advisors. And we say, you want to coach the individual through the sale. You want to coach the individual to be able to do well, but you technically can't sell the product for them. So when you're working on the homework or you're working on the assignment with your child, there's a difference than doing it for your child. So when you're working on the assignment with the child, there's a question and answer period where you go through with your coachee or your trainee and you say, hey, here's the problem. What did you think we should do? Show me how you solve this. And if they solve it correctly, you say, okay, that's great. And then let's move on. But let's say if they didn't solve it correctly, you go back and you ask them, are you sure this is the correct answer? Did you follow the necessary steps? That's doing the homework with the child.
I like that.
As opposed to doing the homework for the child, meaning, okay, your child's got a spreadsheet of math problems and you got your calculator behind them and you're punching in the numbers as they do the work and you're giving them the answers. Yeah, that's definitely a scenario where you're just saying, okay, I'm going to help you get this A because it looks good on our resume, meaning your resume as a child and me as a parent. But if you help the child with the homework, meaning what is the thought process as to going into doing whatever it is,
yes,
then you're teaching the child how to learn. And that's a fine line that sometimes you have to discuss in going back to your concept of being in a business, right? I mean, are we in business to learn how to help the client and be better and gain market share, or are we just in business to make money?
Well, yeah, 100%.
If we're in business to make money, then I'll do whatever is necessary to make sure that the bottom line number is whatever we want it to be.
And that's a great point, right? Because am I in the business of just getting these kids out the door, so therefore I need to just check off the proverbial boxes so that they're successful, or am I in the business of actually developing out this person as an individual, right? As business owners and also as just parents, there's a lot of expectations on us. But you're 100% right. There's a fine line there of assisting our kids in the completion of their homework versus them actually just doing it. And look, I'll be honest, I'm the first one. Like, this is not a great place for me. I'm sitting there watching them struggle to do what's 5 times 12, and I'm like, just write this number down. Or I'm reading with them and I'm like, and sound out this word. I'm like, it's B. But it's difficult, but it's a mindset they have to kind of stay into. But speaking of expectations, I think this is a good segue kind of into our next topic, is expectations not only just around homework, but expectations around, after school activities. Like, it never ends, right? It's like activities like how many baseball games, can we go to, or do we need to go to? I mean, look, we're both in the automotive industry, which is an industry that is bell to bell, suck it up, buttercup, get the job done, whatever time is required to get it done, you have to do it. And it's like, how do you balance out, what the business requires versus the parenting business requires, and maintaining those activities? I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
So one of the things that, I learned through trial and error is, when the children get involved in an activity, baseball, basketball, soccer, band, gymnastics, golf, bowling, and even if they're in academic clubs or let's say debate clubs, right? Your children should see you as being a cheerleader. And
100%.
If your children don't see you as being their cheerleader, they're going to find other people and other outlets, of course, to do that cheering for them. And yes, there's a bias. And, my boys and girls have known that there is a bias, and I don't have a problem with saying that. I'm going to go to the games and I'm going to cheer you on like you're Michael Jordan or Megan Rapinoe or, the best Formula One driver in the world because I'm your dad. That's my job. That's my goal. I tell them that's what I'm paid to do. So you're going to hear me cheering for you and you're going to hear me clapping for you. And I said, yeah, I'm going to embarrass you because that's my job. So once we get that understanding through, that's fine. But they do enjoy it.
Of course.
And, as corny as it may be, yes, it is embarrassing, but that there's a respect factor for knowing that you are there. And if your child is the starting center on the basketball team, or the goalie in the soccer or hockey game or the first forward or whatever it is, they need to know that you are going to be in their corner for those activities. First and foremost, because it's important to them. Second of all, in my opinion, I think there's an investment involved, both as the child for the practices and the commentaries and the games. And let's, go back to the business end of it. You've got to pay for equipment and shoes.
Yes.
And
It's an investment.
Right.
You're 100% right. It's not only investment just in time, and also investment, of course, in money. But I mean, it's where the biggest portion of, I think, a child development happens is at those activities. I always struggled with this, right? But I've also been very open with my kids about, as far as just what does my day-to-day look like and how busy as it gets. So, I've heard my kids say this a couple times and I'm not proud about it, but like, it's okay, Dad, I understand. I'm like, no, actually you don't. You're programmed to say that, all right, because you want my approval, which is completely understandable. I think most kids want their parents' approval, but it's not acceptable. I do need to, I was talking about this the other day is, my kids from a business perspective need to be my number one client. And if my number one client, all right, that represented the largest portion of my revenue, all right, said that, I needed to be in a meeting, for this time, this day and this time, well, sure, I'd go. 100% I would be there.
You need to be in a meeting.
Kids' activities are the exact same way. If it's baseball, if it's dance recitals, whatever it is the same thing. They may tell you that it's okay, but in reality, at that certain age where development, like they need to know that we got them. We're in their corner. We are cheering them on. You said the cheerleader, right? Like how important it is from a development perspective that our kids have a solid cheerleader. And we see this in business as well, right? We think of like young salespeople that are just getting into the business, all right? I see this all the time, all right? If they have a cheerleader, if their manager's really being a cheerleader, say, oh man, you can do this. I know you can do this. You got this, right? Like they usually are way more successful, all right?
Correct. Than
if a salesperson just popped onto a showroom floor and says, there's the keys, there's the brochures, good luck.
Go get them.
Right?
Yep.
I'm curious, like, do you think, from I guess kind of for yourself, let me just ask that. I'll ask that. For yourself, all right, have you ever struggled, to kind of maintain that client as your kids being that number one client?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I make the comment of, saying trial and error. So, there was a period of times where I was in those business meetings. I was on those conference calls. I was on, I'm dating myself, the BlackBerries. And you should have been paying attention to the kids' activities. And, you have some struggles, just as a parent / business owners, or CEO of the family, as you like to call it. And, you lose some market share, you lose some revenue, you make the decision to say, okay. And this goes back to going back to the business of parenting and running a family. Am I doing this to make money, or am I doing this to put a good footprint in the industry? So, this goes back to CEOs of businesses or in the automotive business. And it happens, right? I mean, Are we going to do something in our workshop? Let's say, is it unsafe and it makes us some extra money? Or is it unethical in the sales floor, but it makes us extra gross? Or, are we going to take money away from, let's say, training and development because it makes us more money on the bottom line? And those are the trial and errors of being involved in the business. And, I eventually had to make a shift. And, this goes back to my comment about embarrassing the kids. I would go to the events and, some of the other parents would know who I am and I'd introduce myself. But I would be the one yelling and screaming for my kid. And sometimes they would say, Dad, you're being a little bit too loud. And I said, that's my job. If you hear me, that means that I'm doing my job.
But you know, it's
and
funny.
Eventually, yeah. So.
I love the fact, like, it's being a cheerleader, and you know, Squire, I'll be the first one to admit I am not good at this. I have not been. What's the word I'm looking for? I have not created a routine around not bringing my phone to an activity. Like I hate to say this, but there was definitely times, you know, that I would show up to a hockey game, and it's like it's just like my presence there should be enough, and I just need to check out the proverbial box that I went there. But I would spend, you know, 60% of my time, you know, on my phone, you know, responding to text messages or emails and so on and so forth. I think it's one thing to show up to an activity, and you mentioned this, and I just wanted to highlight this, is that it's not just enough to show up to the activity. You gotta be intentful. You gotta be a part of that activity. And I love the fact you're bringing this up, man, because this is definitely not a place that I've been overly great with.
So one of the things that, and interesting enough, you know, my wife and I were just, you know, discussing it before I came on the podcast. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, she has let me know, and I asked her opinion because obviously she's looking at it from the outside in. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I will tell you this, you know, which is a struggle for me. And, you know, one of the things that she discusses is to have a cutoff time. And I know I'm not great at that at all.
Oh, I know.
So, you know, one of the things about having a cutoff time is whatever time that it is, you know, you need to put the phone or the peripherals away. And I understand that there's some days that you can do it, and there's some days you might not be able to, but having that cutoff time, you know, and she's mentioned this to me, and I have to make that part of, you know, my routine more, is to say, okay, specifically now, because, you know, we get the benefit sometimes of working from these home computers and not going to an office, is that when you're home, you're home. Now, if you work from home, technically you're home all the time, but is home really home? So that is something that I think that, you know, we can all get better at, specifically when we have this access to information superhighway where you're only a click away from getting something or doing something. And there's an app for this, and there's a process for this, and you can do this here, and you can do that there. So, you know, comparing it to, let's say, 20 or so years ago, where you had to physically go someplace
you're right, man.
to do the work, whereas now, as long as, you know, as the interwebs are available, you can still work. Having a cutoff time is something that I think, you know, we all can get better at, you know, as leaders of our families and trying to become better.
Look, it's all about being intentional, right? You know, you mentioned something as well, you're kind of talking, right? And I was listening, and, you know, one of the other topics we want to talk today was about the cool dad, right? And yep. I'm just thinking to myself, you know, like, you know, this was something that, you know, I think my parents were good at. They would come to my activities. Not only would they participate in the activities, but, you know, they're the ones that would bring the cooler of Gatorade. And, you know, they would be the ones that brought all of the orange slices. And, you know, they would be the ones that brought the, you know, the hey, you guys won, and here's a stick-on tattoo to say you're a winner. Like, but they became known as the cool parents. And I'm thinking, like, gosh, man, not only do I have to show up to these activities, I got to help develop them, but I also now need to be the cool person. And maybe you see this even more so in maybe like PTA meetings and stuff like that, and having to be part of memberships and multiple things that your kids are in. But it's like, how do you find the balance, all right, between being, you know, maintaining that business of parenting, but still wanting to be the cool parent? This is the rabbit hole I want to go down, but I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on this. How do we maintain that balance?
So in the automotive business, sometimes you can be the cool dad because you've always got the new cars. And sometimes that's one of the things that, you know, you have the benefit of being into, or, you know, as we discussed earlier, the perks of business ownership, right? So, you know, if you're that parent that, you know, always has, if you're the GM of a dealership, whether it's new car, used car, whatever it is, and you always get the pick of the litter, you can always drive the nicest, coolest product. Sometimes the children will say, okay, you know, you're the cool dad. And sometimes their friends will say that, you know, you're the cool dad because you have things that maybe they're not able to grasp at their level, right? So sometimes that's part of you being the cool dad. Sometimes it's part of you having the ability to go on field trips, or let's say, as a business owner, if you're a local business owner and you got access to, let's say you've donated money to the shopping mall, and the shopping mall always says, okay, we're going to open up the mall early for you and the kids to come in there. Little bitty stuff like that. Or let's say you donate to a local restaurant and you're always able to eat at a discount price, or, like we talked about hotel points. Those are things that are going to make you the cool dad because of the perks or ownership.
That's true.
But I think also it goes into, let's say, also letting the children know that that's not all of who you are. Yes, that's a benefit of, owning and working at a car dealership, when the new Suburban comes out, or let's say the new Corvette or the Hellcat or whatever it is, or, and when I was, working for one OEM, got the opportunity to drive the Jeep where you can take the doors and the roof off, things of that nature, right? So those things are part of the cool things that you get to have, that the children can get the opportunity to see. The memberships in your PTAs and your men's clubs or your parent organizations, a lot of that is to show the other businesses that are helping develop the children, whether it's the schools or it's some of the sports teams or the sports organizations, that you value the time that they put into your children as well. Because also, as we've said, it takes a village to raise a child. So, your teacher is doing one thing and your coach is doing another thing. And let's say your gym instructor is doing another thing. And then you have a dance instructor that's doing another thing, or maybe it's martial arts or something like that. So not only are you, paying money, because that's what these things cost, to get your children involved in these activities, but there's also a value in showing these other businesses how, I'll use the term collaborative, you can be with more than just your time. Are you volunteering at maybe a church? Are you volunteering at doing things of that nature? My children will hate me for saying this, but there were times where we went to the public library. This was obviously before COVID, when they were younger. We would go to the library, and the library had free internet, and we would do homework, and I would have my computer. We would do things at the library just to show what resources are available. And, one of the children said, okay, they want to look at books about military. And then one of the other children, they said, okay, every time we go there, they got an anime book, because that's what she was into. But you learn to find out what other things that the kids are involved in by collaborating with other businesses, because at the end of the day, not every child is going to take or grasp the full intent of the automotive business that we're in. They may say, okay, that's what you're doing. I want to do it.
It's all about examples, right? We talk about this in business all the time. Right? It's just, everybody that works underneath you is always watching you, right? All right. And it's not one of those things of do what I say, not what I do. With parenting, it's very much so they're going to do what they see you do. Right. Yeah. So, if they're going to see that you're active, with, PTA organizations and supporting the community and stuff like that, they see that, and to your point, we were talking about business perks. That's another thing. That's 100% that they see. Right. But it's the way we approach those types of things. Those are the examples that have to be set. And I think that's kind of something that we always have to keep in mind. They are always watching. Always bloody watching. I swear they had, like we always talk about, your parents always said, hey, I got eyes behind my head. I swear my kids have eyes behind their heads, right? Because they see it all. They see, look, you're 100% right. Like, I love the fact you brought up the restaurant thing. Like, there's a restaurant that my marketing agency worked with, and we did a bunch of work with them. So now every time we go in there, they're like, oh, the VIPs are here. Right. Let me show you to your table. I'll bring you your no charge appetizers. And they think it's funny. I think they're funny, but they're almost to the point where like, oh, Dad's a big shot, stuff like that, right? But I think it's how we react to those are the big things, right? I see the same thing now I get with travel points, right? Like, because I travel a lot, I accumulate a lot of points, and it's like, you go to a hotel, well, thank you for being a platinum member, and and they think they don't necessarily understand, I think, at that age, what it means to have those business perks. And then also, to your point about PTA meetings and other community stuff, what does it mean to be involved like that? And you almost kind of have to balance those things out. They need to be able to see it. It's like, if they don't see it and you don't talk about it, then it's like, why are you involved in PTA? If you don't tell them why you're involved with it and what your goal is, they're not going to know. All right. If they see you go to a business and they're treating you differently and they move you to a different seat or something like that, or whatever the hell it is, like if we don't have those conversations with it, they're left to their own to try to figure that one out, and their minds will go in all kinds of different places. They just assume that they get those perks everywhere they go. It's not
exactly.
But look, if we're talking community involvement, we're talking about business perks, it all kind of comes down to just how we lead by example. All right. And open conversation. Look at Squire. I know we're getting towards the tail end of our conversation today, and I'm confident we could probably go for another 30 plus minutes. But man, before I let you go, we've touched on some amazing topics today. And for anybody out there that's watching and listening that would like to connect with you and maybe just follow along with your journey as well, what's the best way to do so?
I'm on LinkedIn. So that's the easiest way to find me. I'm not the largest social media guru. So most of the ways that I connect with people, professionally is through LinkedIn. So, my profile's there. Just if you just type my name, that's there. And that's pretty much it. So, I don't do all of the media platforms or anything like that. I don't have my own video channel or anything like that. I get my best opportunities to do the video channels when I talk to individuals like you, and we just talk about just normal stuff.
Anything and everything, man. Anything and everything. Well, Squire, thank you, man, so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a lot of fun. You have yourself an amazing day.
You too, brother. Appreciate you. We'll talk again.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business of Parenting podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.